Hello, everybody, and welcome again to another episode of Grant Draws. This time we are with Sam Blanchard. Is that how you pronounce it?
That's how you pronounce my human name, Blanchard.
And you like to go by the name Schlepzig.
Well, I publish by my name, Schlepzig. I mean, I'll tell people at cons my human name is Sam. My art name is Schlepzig. So as we're here dealing with each other as humans, Sam is fine.
See,
Um,
that implies that artists are not humans.
no, it implies that I, as an artist, am not human, or at least I've bifurcated the two parts of my life.
I was
Uh,
just joking, anyways. Um,
um, the main thing is that my night job, I guess if you do it, is I'm a fencing coach. And if you're familiar with my art, not all of it is like super appropriate for kids. And so I'm going to get Googled by the parents of my grade schoolers and things like that. And it's you know, nuns with guns and short skirts and go-go boots are probably not the first thing you want to see when you Google your 8-year-old's fencing coach. So I publish under Schlepzig, so it's not like the first hit. But Sam Blanchard is, who I am, and it's not a secret anything what
right.
I do. It's just not front and center of my real name Google results.
And we'll get into. I remember you explaining that, but we'll get into that. I still need to introduce. We'll finish the introduction.
Gotcha.
Uh, Grant Draws is sponsored by the Independent Creator Directory. Do you know what that is?
No, I don't.
So the Independent Creator Directory is
Sounds like I
bas-
should know.
basically my friend Joe Bachman is trying to create like the Internet Movie Database of independent creators, writers, and artists, and not just for comic books, but also for like role playing games or board games. It's a pretty neat little resource. It's called the Independent Creative Directory. And if you want to become a participant in that, the name of the guy who does it is named Joe Bachman. And you can find him on Facebook. And I actually put that in the comments.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty cool thing.
No, that sounds cool. Yeah, it sounds in line with like what Matt Sardo is doing with the Indie Comics Con and um, 100% Comics is doing with the Comics Grant, and Cosmic Lion is doing with all their indie stuff that they're bringing out.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
I'll have to look those up. I don't know if you wanna send those to me. I can put those in the show notes as well.
Oh, sure, sure.
Okay, Sam. So I feel like we just in the intro we uh, we talked about so much different stuff. By the way, would you prefer that I change the the header to Schlepzig?
Yeah, that's probably best.
Okay, that's cool.
Because like I said, I publish under Schlepzig, so if people are looking to find the art and the other stuff afterwards, um, that will get them to it.
Okay, and so I remember you telling me what Schlepzig was from. So I met Sam at um uh at what was it, Garden State Con?
Um, yeah,
Cool. Yeah. So I'm assuming that you're maybe somewhere in that area.
I'm located in Princeton,
Oh, okay, cool.
so yeah, I'm close by.
And so is that kind of like your closest convention?
I guess the Garden State would be it's in there. I mean, I've done. I don't know if Trenton Punk Rock Flea Market counts, but that's like right down the road. That's like 5 minutes away. And then I've done some stuff in the Philly area that's probably as close.
So, I remember you telling me where you got your name from, but I don't remember the story. Right?
Well, it's a convoluted story. The name Schlepzig I've found from the novel Gravity's Rainbow by Thomas Pynchon, one of my favorite, postmodern authors. And in there, the main character Tyrone Slothrop has a fake identification so he can get across the enemy lines into Nazi Germany, and that fake identification is Max Schlepzig, who was a German actor at the time. I don't know if he was a sympathizer or anything. I probably should know. And then back in the VT 100 days, when you had 8 character logins, because of the amount of memory that was allocated to them, that you could only have 8 characters. Couldn't have 9, 10, 12 characters or 1,000 characters that you can have now. So I dropped the C out of it, being SHLEPZIG, and I used that as my handle online for many years, and then just kind of stuck with it. Whenever I needed a you know alter ego, it was Schlepzig.
So I've never read Gravity's Rainbow, but I'm guessing that since I mean, if it made a big enough impact on you that you must recommend it, right?
Uh, I Yeah, I mean it's a great book. It's a tough read. I mean a lot of Pynchon's hard to read.
So
Um,
that's the main thing that I've heard about it. Everybody
is
complains that it's hard to read.
I would say like your trainer Pynchon would be like the Crying of Lot 49. I recommend that to a lot of people. Um, it's one of his earlier and shorter novels.
Now,
So
what do
it's
you
not.
mean by it's a tough read? That just it's very dense, or is it? I've heard that like I mean, you kind of have to be in the right headspace. Like it. How do I word this? It's maybe meant to be kind of ambiguous and not really make sense.
It's There's a lot of like kind of stream of consciousness in his writing, that the narrative will kind of float around, and it's not exactly linear that you might be used to in a lot more of the normal novels that you read. And so there's a lot of kind of going back and figuring out who was what and where they came through, or what the connection is of this current arc of narration is to the main story, if there is a connection. I mean, sometimes there are these wild goose chases that happen that just don't go anywhere, and then just suddenly you're back with the main character.
So now, have you been able to make heads or tails of it, or do you think the point is? I mean, I mean, I don't know. I'm a very big fan of like David Lynch, and I know a lot of his stuff isn't necessarily supposed to have a point to it, or it's not supposed to have. How do I word this? The big problem the big mistake that people make with David Lynch is thinking that there is an explanation to a lot of his movies and TV shows. I mean, do you think it's the same way with Pinchon?
um Not 100% sure. Um it's it's a fun read. I appreciate kind of the whole process of trying to fit the pieces together.
Right.
So even like with your example, like David Lynch, like there are there are all these pieces, and they somehow fit together. Even the parts that don't seem like they fit together, they're part of it. And it's a bit of a puzzle to try and figure out which parts, how they all fit together, where they're connected. And in unraveling that puzzle, I mean, maybe there's no deeper mystery of life veiled in there, but like just solving a solving a jigsaw puzzle, putting all the pieces together and finding that answer is a reward in itself. And it's in the process of figuring all the little details out.
Right, makes sense. So something else that you mentioned, of course, I mean, I feel like you mentioned like you know 10,000 things in your intro that could be um, entire conversations. You mentioned that uh, you teach fencing,
Yes.
and you said that's what you're kind of working on now. It's like it's a t-shirt design.
um yeah, so this is the Citrillo Santelli, looking at um a logo for the Citrillo Santelli High School fencing event, which is the largest high school fencing event in the world. It's about 75 schools in New Jersey all have fencing teams. They all come together for a giant fencing event. And it's one of the New Jersey Scholastic Fencing Association signature events for the year. It's dedicated to the Citrillo and Santelli families that helped put it together, um, way, way back. Um, and the last several T-shirt designs have been really bad. Um, and being associated with it, and some coaches that are friends of mine are the president and vice president of it, and know that I'm an artist, have reached out to me and said, "Can you design us a cool shirt this year?" And so that's part of what I'm working on. Um, right now is getting that the lettering, trying to give it kind of a you know fresh but understandable um, look. I don't want to go like full like deco or anything, because that just feels a little you know trite for fencing. Everything's like so deco retro. In the sport, maybe do something a little more current. Even as I'm sort of stuck in the '80s myself. So it's still going to seem old to all the kids.
Right. So how did you get interested in fencing?
Fencing is a sport I picked up in college in the mid '80s, and it just has been a passion of my life. When I ceased to be an engineer as my daytime job, I had an opportunity to go between teaching fencing and doing art as kind of a career. So I've jumped into that. So those are the two passions of my life that I'm able to pursue now that I'm not stuck in a cubicle in New York all the time.
Okay, so I guess that brings up a new question. So, okay, so you said you used to be an engineer, but you
Yeah.
no longer are.
Well, I mean, I still have my engineering degree. I mean, they didn't take that
Right.
away from me when I left my job, but I don't really do any engineering per se anymore.
And you just didn't enjoy it? Or,
There were parts of it I did enjoy. I, was in a global management group for data centers for a large investment bank, and I got interesting problems to solve, and lots of really interesting analysis to do, and things like that. But the corporate bullshit associated with any job like that is just it's not fun. It's really unpleasant. And ultimately, corporate bullshit is how I ended up being displaced out of the job, which fine by me. I'm not with their I don't have to deal with all that anymore. And The package I got gave me an opportunity to pursue what I really love. So
So that's cool, right? I mean,
I mean, silver lining and all that.
right. So now you're much happier doing art and um
Fencing, yeah.
doing fencing.
Oh, absolutely.
Wow. So now, like I said, we met at Garden State. Let's talk about your art a little bit, since we've been going at it here for a while, and we still haven't talked about the main important thing, right?
I know. I've got a lot of facets.
Right. That's good, right? You never get bored, right?
I like to think so.
So when you get done with this drawing, are you gonna recreate it what in Illustrator or what? I'm assuming some type of vector graphic.
No, no. What I'll do is I'll after I get done putting the inks, I'll scan it. I'll import that into MediaBang is the software I use mostly.
Media Bang.
MediaBang. It's a manga software
Oh,
from a Japanese company,
aha.
and I started using it many years ago. I'm not an Apple person,
Okay.
and most of when I started doing the art and finishing it, digitally for any kind of publication online or whatever, I needed a software that I could run on an Android tablet. And most of the art software, I mean, if you've been around at all, is made for the iPad.
Okay.
Like Procreate was iPad only, Clip Studio was still iPad only.
Yeah.
Um, there was a lot. There was Autodesk Sketch, which was available on Android, and I used that for a while, but I had some difficulty extracting line art in Sketch. So, I eventually discovered MediaBang, which ran native in Android, and it works a lot like Clip Studio.
Okay.
And everything has the basic, you know, Adobe like interface. The Adobe controls are pretty much the industry standard.
Right.
So, um, because it was available and had some really good line art extraction tools, I still consider the Android version the best line art extraction tools I've come across. Um, Clip Studio has a similar set of tools, but I don't know. They're kind of janky in in some ways. That I mean, like the Media Bank tools. It's got like three buttons and a couple sliders to adjust like density and your light and dark balance, and it takes whatever was scanned and turns the values into a transparent black and white or transparent black drawing that you can put color under or do whatever under. And the main settings like the 1 2 3 settings are usually fine. The default usually works great. And then if you need to tweak it, it's just like a couple simple sliders to adjust it. Clip Studio has got 1,000 controls to try and figure out. They're probably brilliant if you can figure them out.
So you
I just
like
wanted
simplicity.
I just wanted to draw
Right.
and not have the tools get in the way. So, I've stuck with it. It's got a couple features that I really appreciate. It's the only one I found that natively works in the cloud, which which is really cool because I can work on my tablet, or I can go over to my PC and pick up the same drawing, or I can go over to a different tablet and work on the same file instantly in the cloud. Just it's right there and it's built into the program. I don't have to like kludge it into like a Google Drive or anything. You know, I pay for cloud storage with MediaBang, and everything just exists on their cloud. And wherever I go, there it is. As soon as I log into the program, I have access to all my files with them.
Neat.
Um, it is neat. And if I ever worked with somebody else, like if I worked with a inker, or if I worked with a colorist or a letterer, it would make it really handy to like, here are our files, and we could like just set aside our layers on the different pages and say, okay, this is what I'm doing, and constantly see like where everyone was and how it integrates with the work, without having to do any kind of kludging to work together.
Yeah, so I remember when I met you at Garden State, I remember your style being very, very distinctive. And that's kind of why you stood out in my memory. Um, um,
Distinctive is one way to put it.
um, so, well, how would you describe your style?
um, it's a little insane, but I wear my influences on my sleeve. Um, the people that influence me a lot. I crib a lot from like Ashley Wood. Other things, from like Jim Mahfood and Bill Sienkiewicz, and other part of what I would like to, I kind of describe as the impressionist comic makers out there. Um, there's that kind of Western. It's currently, I think it's more of a Western movement than a manga or Asian movement of like this really kind of insane cartoony thing. Kind of coming out of some of the Bill Stedman school, um, and that's really interesting as far as like comics making is going. Sienkiewicz really brought it to life, like when he was first coming out of his Moon Knight phase, and did the David Lynch Dune adaptation in comic book form, and then went on to do New Mutants and go just a little bit crazy, and ultimately like doing stuff like Electro Assassin that are just everything about that. The storytelling is very impressionistic. It's not like that very direct sort of like Neo Adams type style, which is very structured, or like the Barry Windsor Smith style, which is classic illustration, which is kind of where my roots are, is in classic construction. So you
Right.
see a lot of that also in my DNA. I'm a huge fan of Barry Windsor Smith, Frank Frazetta, going back through those classic illustrations. And you can see that strong construction, strong anatomy in my work, even as I kind of break the rules and stretch and pull things. Like I've got this little doodle card that I did that um, I just rescued from like the floor of my car.
Yeah.
You can see it's been stepped on a few times, but it was just, I don't know. I think it was a punk rock flea market sort of. I'm bored and I'm doodling things. I was playing with stamps.
I see a Frank Miller influence too. Is that
Yeah,
accurate?
Frank Miller. Frank Miller's like kind of had a lot of different flavors to his art over the years.
Fair enough.
But the way he uses black spaces, I've studied a lot. That light dark balance, same thing with Mike Mignola, and um, oh, who is it? I've got some other examples. Let's see. Um, Munoz, and other people like that. Um, so
So
that.
something. Okay, sorry. Go ahead and finish.
Oh no, I was just kind of trailing off there. Oh, who was it that did Polar? I've got that up there, but I can't reach it from where I'm sitting. He did some really brilliant stuff. I think he's Portuguese or South American or something. Um,
What? I'm sorry. What was the name of the comic book? I didn't hear it.
Polar.
Polar.
Yeah,
Um,
I can probably look it up, but
that's. I was just about to.
it's
Uh, Victor Santos.
yeah, and it's got a very. I'm trying to look around. It's a lot like another person whose name is escaping me. Um, but
Don't you hate that?
oh, you know, I'm old. I'll just blame it on being old
Okay.
and tired and well, not drunk, but I, I mean, it's you know, there's so much in that in the old noggin that I just can't keep it all straight.
I hear you. Same thing kind of happens to me. So basically, you had a lot of influences, and I mean, you definitely took these influences and made them your own.
Yeah, I mean, but I mean, you can see the DNA there. I think we all kind of, as artists, that you know, if you really dissect it, you can see, those influences through there. You know, none of us are islands in any way.
For sure. Um, but if you had like one guy to say, or one person who you had to say was like kind of like your big influence, who do you think that would be?
Um, I mean, I think I copy Ashley Wood the most. There's an there's a simplicity to his line that I find really intoxicating. Um, and you work to try and capture that in a lot of my work. Um, there's just a simple flow and just one line that's amazing. Um, and so yeah, I definitely try and find that same place in my own work a lot.
Neat. And so it sounds from talking to you, it sounds like you maybe started out more as like a more traditional um like comic book fan, like you mentioned Barry Windsor Smith and Neil Adams. Was that kind of what got you into comic books?
Um, no, I mean I got into comic books, in the mid '70s. I was fairly young. Um, so I mean Neil Adams was around, but the basic, whoever was doing, you know, stuff. Oh, what's his face? Um, oh, I'm drawing a blank again. But just the house artists at Marvel and DC. I was reading a lot of that, and my parents were art teachers, so and
Oh, okay.
artists. So art was just part of the daily grind. Um, that as a kid, if there was downtime, what do? Here's some paper, go draw, kid. Um, and if you know then as I started to draw more, if I wanted to you know get some advice, I could ask my mom or my dad, advice as as artists, like how to do something, and I may listen to them. I may not listen to them. I mean, who listens to their parents when you're a teenager?
Right.
Um,
Now, was there art more traditional, or were they relatively open-minded when it came to this sort of thing?
um, their art is pretty traditional. My mother's a watercolor artist; she still is. My father's no longer with us. He was a brilliant, brilliant painter. And I think at the height of his career, he was fantastic aviation artist. He did a mural at the International Aerospace Hall of Fame for the Eagle Squadron. Um, and then later in life, he did some more kind of weird religious paintings. And you know their composition was really pretty freewheeling. And even as he started doing more portraiture and stuff in his career later in life, he was doing a lot of like multimedia experiments and um, multimedia composition, and you know, I mean, some really interesting stuff. So there's that, but he could really do it all as an artist. Um, I've got a book of his illustrations. I usually have at my table um, that I rescanned and did on Amazon after he passed, so that they continue to be available to the world.
Oh wow,
Um,
that's cool. So this is a book you put together yourself?
it's actually two books that he did in 1978 of World War II and World War One aircraft
Oh, neat.
illustrations.
Okay.
Um, he was a huge aviation fanatic. He built a couple planes and was a pilot.
And he
Um,
also enjoyed painting airplanes.
he was really passionate about airplanes, and so that was what he pursued a lot in his art. But he did these books in at the end of the 70s and published them. Didn't sell more than a couple hundred copies, and they were languishing in my mom's garage for many years after his passing. You know, or many years before his passing, and then since his passing, they were just kind of sitting there. So I got some of them. I did some high quality scans, and got them repackaged for Amazon print on demand. So they're there, and you can see them. I have some copies that I keep at my table for people to look at. I've given some copies away to people that like that sort of thing. I know I was tabled next to Chris Bitzer and Jim Rugg at Heroes Con a couple years ago, and I gave a couple copies to them. They were like really interested in the cross hatching technique and just the traditional sort of work. Um, I give them away a lot. I give a lot of stuff away. I'm not a good businessman. Uh, I'm much more interested in just being an artist than I guess making great money at it.
Well, you have that big fencing money, right?
Um, Nobody has big fencing money. There's no big fencing money out there. I do all right. I do all right as a fencing coach. I do all right as an artist. I I do some work and get paid decently for commissions and other stuff. I've got my books. I need to draw more. I've been on kind of a dry spell lately, so I need to get to the board more often.
Yeah. So it sounds like your parents kind of put the fire in you as far as like drawing is concerned, and then you became interested in comic books. Can you think of any of those early comic books that really, like maybe if like one of the first comic books that really got you excited about the medium?
Um, I loved the Peanuts. very early on. That was like some of my first reading material. But then there was a giant Superboy annual or something that my grandmother got me. That was like one of those huge like things, like newspaper sized, and it had like the complete roster of the Superboy Legion of superheroes, and I just love seeing like the billions of weird DC heroes that were out there, and thinking about what kind of stories that they would be in, and that kind of started to get the creative side going in that way. Like what the heck does Matter Eater Lad do? How does he have a story? Um, and or Bouncing Boy, or any of those crazy Legion people. And then there was really early on, there was the Thanos arc with him getting the Soul Stone from Adam Warlock, and across the Avengers annual and the Marvel 2-in-1 with Spider-Man and the Thing annual in, I think it was 1977, 1978. I've looked it up a bunch of times and I don't remember it terribly well. And I remember that was like one of the first like continuing stories I was really into in that early Marvel period. And then it just kind of progressed on from there, thinking about it. Um, but I mean, I guess the watershed event, and it was a watershed event for a lot of independent, people who would become independent creators, was the Turtles.
Yeah.
Um, the Turtles came out, and it was at that point where the technology was starting to come together, with Xeroxes, and um, it wasn't entirely digital printing, but it was that all electronic printing. It was really available to everybody, and that changed a lot, because now you didn't have to do a print run of like 10,000 with offset printing to make a thing. You could go do a little zine on your Xerox machine, and um, come out. You could do paste up, and cut up, paste up, to get the lettering together and clean stuff up that way, without having really expensive equipment.
Right.
And the Turtles came out, and
So
I
this
think
so you're talking about like the original comic book. You're not talking about like the animated series or any of that.
oh yeah, like 1984, like when the Turtles hit and the comics industry didn't know what hit it. So like the first issue one came out, and poof, it was gone. Everyone wanted it, so there was a second printing. I have a second printing of issue one around here somewhere that I bought then. Um, and I've read it to death, so it is threadbare. Um, and but it came out. I think the thing about it was good, but it wasn't too good. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like it came out, and you looked at it and it's like, this is brilliant, and it was kind of rough and raw, and you looked and you said, I could do that. You know that the art was good and the storytelling was good, but it wasn't like trying to draw like Neil Adams or something like at the time.
So it was
Or
kind of punk rock in a way, right?
yeah, I mean it was very punk rock, and that it got like the Velvet Underground. It sold 1,000 copies, and every single person started making their own comics.
Right.
Like the first Velvet Underground album. It's like it only sold
Right.
a few copies, but every single person started their own band. Um,
Exactly.
and so the Turtles really kind of cemented it for me and a billion other people at the same time. Then life took me a different direction. I got an engineering degree, worked in corporate hell for 30 years, and
So that's interesting. So, I mean, I don't know a lot about engineering, but I know that there's a lot of math involved.
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
that
There's,
something?
I'm good at math, and all that sort of thing. And I actually like math. I really enjoy it. Um, and I don't know. I mean, a lot of people are like, you can't be an artist and an engineer. They just think it's impossible. Um, I guess I never thought it was impossible, so I did it. Um, but it's the nice thing about it is you're never starving as an engineer.
Right. Yeah, it's much easier to make a career uh, if your interest is math than if it's art, right?
Yeah. Well, at least if you're in a technical field like that it's nice. Like from the time I got my engineering degree, I think I was unemployed, unintentionally for like 15 minutes over the course of my career.
Right.
Every time I wanted another job, there was another one out there. It was easy to find,
Right.
and it'd be a good paying job.
Right.
And you know, food and housing and all that are really nice things to have, and not have to like fret about it all the time.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's. I mean, that's pretty much everybody that I know who wants to do something creative's uh, dilemma. How do I do something that won't make me miserable, but I can also make a little bit of money at?
Yeah, that you don't have to worry about where your next meal is coming from, or how you're making rent, or you know that, because that's incredibly stressful. I
Right.
mean, my parents were artists. We were not well off. We were not middle class. Um, so that is something I was acutely aware of. As starting my own family, that I did not want to be in that position, that we were worried about where the next meal was going to come from.
So now, was that a big dilemma? Was that? I mean, was that something that you conscientiously thought like, okay, I can either go to school to be an artist and maybe struggle and not know where my next paycheck is going to come from, or I can go to school for engineering.
Oh, absolutely. You know, at some point in my education, I became a single father, and it was no longer just me on the line. So it was me and my son, and it's like the answer is obvious. Finish the engineering degree, get an engineering job. Um, make sure everything is taken care of.
So uh you just have the one son, or do you have more kids than that?
I have 4 children.
Four children. Okay.
Yeah,
That's quite a
of
few.
varying ages.
Well, I would hope of varying ages.
Um, it was we're kind of like on the every 10 years sort of scale. So
Oh, okay.
my oldest is in her 30s, and my son is also in his 30s, and then another one is in her 20s, and the youngest is a teenager. So
Neat. Okay, so they're starting to get older, so maybe they don't require quite as much oversight from you, or
uh, I can't even get into that. they,
oh, really?
yeah, some more than others.
I understand. And I mean, yeah, I understand. Um, so are any of them interested in art?
Um, all of them are interested in art, to differing degrees. My youngest, she makes comics all the time. She's quite the artist. Um, she has occasionally asked for advice, which is pretty astounding. I mean, considering teenager life. And then, my middle daughter is um, in the arts as well. She's got her degree in dance and is, in process of, getting into modern dance companies and things like that. Then
Yeah, cool.
my son dabbles a little bit, and he draws. And he's a decent artist, but he's really more about trying to make ends meet right now. And then my oldest is a photographer, so photographer and printmaker.
Wow, so everybody's interested in art. And I mean, did you have in okay, you said that they don't normally ask for advice. Um, I'm assuming you didn't like try to push any advice on them or anything like that.
No, I mean I will tell my youngest when she's drawing not to do sketchies, and she's gotten better at that. Um,
Sketchy?
sketchies, that is a common drawing technique that, um, like when you learn sketching, you want to use kind of a long flowing line here. Like I'll draw a long line, or if I'm doing a body, you know, we'll do the gesture, and that gesture is in long lines,
Right.
right? Um, you have a lot of young artists that will approach it as as a series of short lines that they'll rough out their shapes with these jaggy. Oh, I'm off screen. With these jaggy little lines, yeah,
Right.
and these drive me nuts. These are the sketchies, and they're they're really kind of normal rookie mistake. I did it, when I was a little kid, um, and it makes it really hard to capture the whole shape all at once because you're starting at one side and you're kind of rendering all the way down
Right.
and not capturing the end of your shape. And so your proportions can wander over the course of, finding these lines. You know. So yeah, the sketchies drive me nuts.
So
So
I yeah, I didn't know that there was a word for
I
them.
I made that up. That's what I call
I mean, who knows? Maybe one day it'll be in the dictionary, right?
it. I mean, I think our teachers have a lot of different ways to approach it. Um, I call it the sketchies, and it's something you see a lot. Um, and it is the gesture line is something that you'll learn, like really, first year art school is gesture drawing, and your instructor is going to like smack you in the hand if you try and do sketchy lines on your gesture.
So
And yeah.
so you seem to be interesting. You seem to be interested in drawing and teaching. Have you ever thought about teaching art?
I have a little bit. Um, I definitely like in online. I will often offer advice to beginners on online. People ask for you know what could I do to improve this drawing, or what do I need to do, and I'll offer a lot of help, a little bit of mentoring. Um, you know, sometimes it's just really frustrating to do that. I've taught a couple classes to elementary school students about comics making, and that's gone with varying degrees of success. And of course, I'm a fencing coach, so I'm teaching all the time. I'm just teaching fencing, not teaching art.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, I think I've done a little bit of that as well, and yeah, you're right. It can be frustrating. It's frustrating when people don't take your advice, right?
Yeah, it is, and that's one of the lessons you kind of learn as a teacher, I guess, that you do your part, and they kind of do their part, and the results, you're not in control of the results. It's not like drawing, because like I draw, I you know do what I want. I can kind of push it into what I want it to be, and it's easy to impose my will on it, if you might say. Um, that if something isn't quite right, I can adjust it. Right, like say this curve is just a little off, I can redraw it. I can adjust it. I can show a little bit in shading, more where I want it to be. When you're with a student, you give them the best instruction you can, and they're going to do with it what they do with it. And sometimes unintended results are fantastic. Sometimes they just miss the mark, and there's no way you can get them back on it.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about that, but then I think back to when I was in college. I definitely had teachers who, for one reason or another, I mean, they gave me advice, and I didn't listen to it. Mostly, I mean, just in terms of their style being a little bit too maybe traditional, more than I was interested in doing. Um, I mean, sometimes teachers get it into their head, this is the only way to do it, and
Oh, absolutely.
you know,
Totally agree. I had art teachers that hated me. And I mean, I asked my parents for advice. I didn't always listen to
right?
it. So
That can
even
be
on
sorry.
our own, we did things our own way.
Yeah,
And, I guess the way to deal with it in the most healthy way as teachers is like, you've done your part. You've given them the tools, and you got to just let them use them the way they're going to use them.
right. Yeah, I was going to say that can almost be a skill in and of itself, like figuring out what advice to listen to and what advice not to listen to, right?
I mean, as an artist, I don't know. As an artist, I think you're going to do what you're going to do. You've got an idea in your head, and you're going to pursue that idea, and you're going to look for the tools that help you do that. And we all crib from different artists. Like I'll start with you know an idea, and maybe I stole a composition from Frank Frazetta or something that I really liked, and I'll try and do my own thing with that. Right, like your really common Frazetta composition is like you know the classic triangle, right? And there'll be something about the way he angles the figures that I kind of dig, right? Like you have those things like you know, like here's basic Frazetta outline. You got you know some body kind of torsion, and then you've got like this crazy beast out here. Let's Let's put a spear in there. There's that. Then you got your trees. That kind of maybe I just kind of riffing on that theme to get there. And I mean, he didn't invent this. This was Renaissance era thinking to you know build this layout. But you see it in like one of his paintings, or you see it in something else, and you kind of want to do it. And then let's see, maybe I'll steal a little bit of Miller and this dark light balance. You know, like I'll have the figure like silhouetted against this really dark monster body.
Right.
Yeah, put some backlight here against. Yeah.
So, Sam, I try to keep these to about an hour.
Oh, I'm
Um,
sorry. I probably just filibustered away on you. I
no, this was perfect, actually.
I
Um,
do that a lot.
no, this was a really good conversation. Thank you so much. Um, like I said, I'm a very big fan of your art.
Oh, thank you.
I'm glad we could finally get you on the show. I would like to talk to you maybe about one day, including you in one of my anthologies. I don't know. I don't know if you have time to do a whole little story, or if maybe just like
Um,
a cover or something. I don't know.
you know, that's that's always kind of a rub. I've got so much going on, but I'm also really easily distracted, and will like just bang out an idea in a few days, and you know, nothing else can get it. I can't get anything else out of my mind, through my mind until I got that out of my mind. Um, Probably undiagnosed attention deficit disorder. It certainly has all the hallmarks of that.
Yeah.
But if you got a cool idea, just hit me with it, and we'll see what happens.
Cool. I mean, would you be more interested in coming up with your own story, or would you be more interested in drawing something that uh, a story that somebody else wrote?
I think I'm generally better with my own stories, and then I mean I've worked with a couple authors in different ways with different levels of success, and I think the for me my best successes are when a author brings me a story, and then that is like 80% ready, and lets me kind of run with it to turn it into um, what I want. I had a couple really really successful collaborations with um, David Allen. That Dave Writes Comics is his handle online, and a lot of it was, he gave me a script. We started out with like a really kind of rote script, and I made a lot of changes to it. I felt bad about that, but I felt like in terms of storytelling on the page, let the artist do that.
Yeah.
And don't like your traditional comic strip is like page one, panel one, opening shot, dialogue, figure looking at fence outside of whatever, and it's really prescriptive of what the author kind of sees on the page. And for a lot of artists that can really work. um, it doesn't for me, because I start to like kind of get into the story, and when I'm trying to pursue like the visual part of it, I start to see like where I want the emphasis and where the storytelling is on the page, and that's something that the authors rarely write about. um, they talk about things and places and stuff, not I want to see, you know I need to see a twinkle in this person's eye that they know something that's going to be revealed on page 6. Or something like that. That's not, you know, script writing 101 doesn't give you that kind of thing. You know, that there's that. And that's what the artist really is bringing to the table. And so I say, let your artist, you know, they know the story, let them tell the story, because that's, comics. If you're writing a prose story and you want to craft your images with words, then you're writing a novel, you're not writing a comic. If you need pictures and you have an artist that's doing the pictures, let the artist do the pictures. Don't get in their way. So with David and with Jonathan Thompson, who I also had a really good working relationship with, they they've given me really open ended stuff. And if I'm doing anything that's modifying the story or filling out the plot, I usually run it past them first. I'll say, hey, I want to do this, or I want to do this, or I want to go this direction, and get some input for them. I don't just run roughshod over them all the time.
Right.
Sometimes it's like, this is what I'm drawing, and tough. That's what's on the page. But the feedback I've gotten is they've been really happy with the results, and I've been really happy with the results. And you know, um, as an artist, I can't speak for all artists, but I think having a writer that's like really really set and like, I wrote this in this panel and that's exactly what I want to see. As an artist, I find that really disheartening. It's not easy to work with. It's right,
Yeah.
because you've got your vision, and they came to you because of your vision. Like if somebody wants me to do their story, it's because they want me and they want what I do. As weird as it is, they want what I do. And so don't try and, fence me in with that. Trust my instincts is what it is. And I guarantee you that any artist is going to be more emotionally involved, like more personally involved with making the best comic book they can, as opposed to, just getting what you described on the page. That's, the workman, the jobber philosophy. If, I steal Ed Piskor's like jobber conceit, right? If,
Right.
that if you're in that position where you're just like, doing what you're told, you're not gonna put out your best work. And everyone wants to see your best work. And I think that's part of, where the big two, where Marvel and DC have kind of gone wrong, is they've got these stables of really good, you know, very talented people. Even the unknowns are really talented people, but they hedge them into house styles and you know corporate standards. You know that this is what we want to see, and they do the work and it's good enough, but it's not their passion. You don't see that spark in a lot of it. And I
Yeah.
think if the philosophy were, um, here is an idea, run with it. We want to see your version of it. And with the big names, they let them do that. But you get like your talented kids and things that are out there, and you box them into house styles. Um, I don't know. They can succeed, but they'll be boring and they'll be bored.
Right.
I don't know. I filibustered again.
No, it's all right. I I agree with what you're saying. I mean, um, I mean, I've done both. I've drawn comic books that I wrote, and I've also hired artists um, that that you know to draw my scripts. And um, a lot of times I'll say, okay, this is how I picture the page being, and I always leave the caveat, if you have a better idea, please throw something out there. But it's very, very, very rare that anybody ever like says, okay, well, actually, wouldn't it be better you know if we did this instead? And I don't know. As somebody who used to do freelance, I can kind of understand why that is. Just because if you don't do exactly what the client wants, there's all there's a very, very likely chance that they're going to say, no, you have to do it over again.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah. Well,
obviously,
that's the difference between being a client and collaborator, right?
right?
And I think even if you hire an artist, you're hiring a collaborator more than they're your client.
Yeah. I mean, but the point I was making was, I've always kind of welcomed, people saying, hey, I have a better idea. And believe it or not, it's very, very rare that that happens.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I'm kind of famous for it. I feel like I'm a huge pain in the ass to work with. So the authors I've worked with say they really enjoy it. I can only imagine that I'm a huge pain in the ass.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that I would be up for that sort of thing. I don't know if all writers are. So, Sam, do you have? I guess we'll leave it at that. Do you have anything you want to promote?
Um, Not right this minute. I've got a bunch of stuff. Like I said, I've been kind of in a dry spell. Um, I've had to, deal with a lot of like really mundane stuff that's not drawing lately. So I have, you know, getting sitting down and drawing today is like the first time I've really drawn in almost 2 months
Oh wow!
because life has been really complicated lately.
So I kind of did
And
you a favor.
you did, and I know we've been trying to get this organized for a long time, but and I was really excited when you contacted me the other day. It's like let's do this Sunday, and you know, I've gotten to draw. I've been just enjoying like kind of doodling through the whole thing. Hopefully, your viewers enjoy watching the process. And it's kind of funny, like it's all pencils, and my pencils and my inks are totally different. You can see like how traditional my pencils are. Whereas when I go to inking, if you're familiar with my work online on my Instagram, it looks so much crazier.
So
Um,
the inking is kind of when it comes to life. Okay.
Absolutely. That's exactly how I describe it as well. That's a beautiful way to say it. But let's see, I talked about those two story or some of the stories with David Allen. Those are coming out. Containment Breach number 4 has got a story called Prepare that he wrote and I drew. That was our first work together. And there's another anthology with two anthologies from another publisher who I don't remember that's doing an Eldritch Tales, H.P. Lovecraft stories, and a set of Grindhouse stories that he wrote and I drew. That's coming out real soon or has come out. That I'm pretty excited about. And then I guess I've got a bunch of books in the works that I want to nail down. The long languishing chicken story. Um, I've got to get done, so I've got to like not formally agree to anything until I've got that off of my plate because that is so far overdue that it's not funny. It's irresponsible of me, and I hate that. But again, the my brain just does not work with me sometimes, and it's hard to buckle down on some things. So
Well,
that
maybe this will the fact that you sat down and drew today will um, light a fire under you or something. I don't know.
oh, absolutely. I really appreciate it. Um, loved loved drawing when we were talking here,
Yeah. Well,
and
thank you so much for being on the show, and I look forward to you. We can talk later about if if you want to collaborate on anything.
yeah, I mean, I love saying yes to everything, and I know I probably shouldn't a lot of the time, but I love saying yes to things. Just like I love giving stuff away. Uh,
That sounds like a good way to go through life.
Not if you want to make rent.
All right, Sam. Well, it was a very nice conversation. I'm going to let you go, and
Oh, thank
maybe
you, Grant.
maybe you can continue working on whatever this is that you're working on.
Well, I really need to get those shirts done. And I don't think Booty Girl fighting a Tyrannosaurus in the jungle is what they're expecting for a fencing shirt. Uh,
Unless the Tyrannosaurus had a tiny little sword that he was fighting with.
yeah, it probably wouldn't make the cut. But I'll get back to that. I think the lettering's over here, so get that and draw some fencers and come up with a graphic process with it. And if you're in the New Jersey area and we're probably at Drew University again, come see the Citrullo Santelli event early in January. You'll be relegated to the mezzanine, but it is a fantastic view of the largest high school fencing event in the world. Thousands of fencers. It is quite the thing.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Sam. And thank you, everybody who watched this. We'll be back next week with a new guest. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Grant.